and welcome to part 14 of the RazorwireReviews Bat-a-thon. This was initially, like, I planned it out to be the preview of the Dark Knight Rises installment and also initial reaction. So I was going to do like a preview talking about the build-up to this film, and then also lower this down actually. I was going to talk about the preview, like just the build-up to the film, and also my first reaction to it on the day, on Friday the 20th of July. And I did put up a couple of like joke videos that were like a minute long about my initial reaction where I'm just like that. But that was before I found out what happened in America in the Denver shootings. That's why I didn't do a preview video over the weekend. I just didn't want to really do anything. Like I ranted about the film on Facebook about how amazing it was, but I didn't want to make a video. And I've seen people who've made videos and they've made like the thumbnail of their videos, like the picture of the guy who did it. And I hated that. I just thought it was really like trying to grab views and stuff. I didn't like people giving this guy attention, so I'm not going to mention his name or even talk about the incident in depth at all. But of course my thoughts go out to every family member, every person who was affected by it, and it's just a horrible thing. But I'm just going to get on with the review of the film anyway. So if you haven't seen the film already, I recommend you stop watching right now. I'm not going to try and avoid spoilers. Every review I've seen on YouTube has avoided spoilers, but I just have to talk about them. So right, I'm going to do the preview bit here as well. I'm going to try and be as concise as possible. After The Dark Knight, you know, with Heath Ledger's passing and everything, people were thinking, right, well, how are they going to do a third film without the Joker, and it's not going to work and stuff. People still wanted to see it though, and Christopher Nolan was kind of shying away from it. Wasn't sure whether he was going to do it. And so he went off, he made Inception 2 years later, and that was an amazing film as well. And then he must have decided that he was going to return to Batman, and he had a story that was going to end his take on Batman. There's actually, I read a bit in a piece in the Empire magazine, an article. I can't remember who it was. I think it was either his brother, the co-writer, or David S. Goyer, who contributed to the story. He said that he was sitting with Christopher Nolan in a cafe about a month after The Dark Knight came out, and he said, "Imagine this for the last shot of the next movie," and they both just smiled at each other and were like, "We've got to do that at some point." So that, when I read that, got me really excited for what the ending of this film was going to be. Then I remember going to see Harry Potter and the Deathly Hallows Part 2 when it came out last year, and you're probably thinking, what has that got to do with anything Batman related? Well, they released the first teaser trailer for The Dark Knight Rises, and all it was Commissioner Gordon in bed, like ill, going, "The Batman must come back," and then just the title, and it was just like, it wasn't even a teaser trailer, it was like a teaser full teaser trailer. It seemed like it was too early, but I guess Warner Brothers were like, right, we're making this film, we want people to know about it as soon as possible and as many people as possible. Then towards the end of 2011 they released, before Mission Impossible 4 Ghost Protocol, they released a 6-minute prologue of The Dark Knight Rises, which is the whole beginning of the film with Bane in the 2 planes and stuff, which I downloaded illegally online, and I tried to watch it, but it was really bad quality, so I just deleted it and thought, no, I'm going to wait for the film. I did download also the trailer, which had just been released at that same time as well, the first kind of proper trailer, and that was really cool as well. It kind of took me back to like back when the internet was in its early days, and you would watch a trailer that's like on a box about that big and like really low quality, but you'd still get excited all the same. Then I guess in the first months of this year, you know, magazines, pictures, like the first pictures, like the one of Batman with that big light gun that turned out to be only used once in the film, you know, and then bit of Tom Hardy as Bane, and again, same thing with Heath Ledger. I didn't really know much about Heath Ledger really before Dark Knight. Same with Tom Hardy to an extent, although when I saw Warrior, which was my favourite film of 2011, I thought, wow, okay, now I'm excited about what he's going to do with the Batman villain, particularly Bane, who's someone who just hasn't really been utilised in film well at all, really. He was in Batman and Robin, and it was just a disgrace. It's such a bad character. And then, you know, then the trailers started coming in the past few months, like the full trailers and stuff, and the one that I really love was the Nokia exclusive trailer, which is kind of like the last full trailer that was released, and it actually uses proper score from the film, which isn't actually on the soundtrack, which is nice. It's a brilliant piece of music that just builds up, and it just, I must have watched it at least 10, 15 times. So excited about it, and I was kind of having doubts as well. I was thinking, I'm really excited, but when I think about it, I don't know. Like, there wasn't anything in particular that made me really excited about the film other than it was the last one. I mean, the trailer looked great and stuff, but I don't know, I was getting really like nervous as the days ticked down to, you know, how the film was going to pan out. So eventually I ended up going on Friday. I went to the 5 AM showing, which is basically the equivalent of a midnight showing, because Warner Brothers didn't allow the UK to show it at midnight, because that would have been the 19th of July in America. So went to the 5 AM show, met with one of my best mates, Denzel. We walked into Cardiff at like 3 in the morning, and yeah, just talked about all things Batman and other stuff. And then we got there, and it was quite packed as well. You know, a guy turned up dressed as Bane, but from Batman and Robin, with like the green fluorescent tubes, which was just hilarious. And then we proceeded to sit through 45 minutes of adverts and trailers. Now, last midnight showing I went to see, I've only seen 3 in my life, was Prometheus, and that was only a few months ago. And they didn't show any trailers, it was just midnight, bang, there you go, Prometheus. It was really cool and exciting, like, oh, no trailers. I was expecting the same here, and I was so amped up at like 10 to 5, and then it was like adverts, and more adverts. Literally at least twice as many adverts as you get seeing any other normal film, and I counted, I think, about 11 trailers. So eventually the film started, and I was like, God, am I going to be able to stay awake? It's 5:45 already. But luckily the film just kept my attention the whole way. It was very hot in there because there were so many people, but yeah, the film itself, now we've got there, 6.5 minutes into the video, we've got there, the film. I absolutely loved it. It far surpassed my expectations, which were pretty high to begin with. I did not think it was going to be better than The Dark Knight, but in my opinion I think it is. Or, you know, I prefer it. I think it's the best of the 3. And it's hard to say, I think it probably is the best Batman film ever made. Even though I'm very partial to the 1989 Batman film, and I feel like that's more of a Batman film than any of the Nolan films, but the Nolan films are just so much better films generally. Like, The Dark Knight really crosses into just kind of being a crime drama and a psychological thriller than a comic book movie, because it's so grounded in reality for the most part. But The Dark Knight Rises, it felt more like a Batman movie, I don't know. Even though he wasn't in it that much, and again I'm going to spoil things here, but you know, the film starts off and Bruce Wayne is a recluse and he's got, you know, a bad leg and stuff, and over the 8 years that have passed since The Dark Knight, it's just been holed up in Wayne Manor, which has now been rebuilt, and he hasn't gone out or anything, and he's just become a real recluse, like I said. The film opens with Commissioner Gordon giving a speech outside Wayne Manor as part of Harvey Dent Day. So they're celebrating Harvey Dent, even though he turned out to be a murderer at the end of The Dark Knight, but because Batman kind of took the blame for that, he went into retirement to kind of save the face of Gotham's hope, and, you know, the people, their perception of you know, good and all that kind of stuff in the police department. And Commissioner Gordon's giving this speech, and he's kind of like, you know, you can tell he's playing on his mind and stuff, and that's the thing about the film, his guilt for not actually going ahead and telling the truth. And he had a speech written, but he didn't read it. So yeah, the film opens, and we get introduced to Selina Kyle, who infiltrates Wayne Manor as a maid and steals Bruce Wayne's mother's pearls, and they have a bit of interaction. Yeah, the opening, I forget the prologue of the film with Bane. Kind of, I don't even go into it, but this big plane stunt and stuff. I thought it was a brilliant opening sequence. A friend of mine said they didn't like it because it was too similar to the opening of The Dark Knight, which was pretty much a 5-6 minute introduction to the main villain of the film. But I liked carrying on the tradition of that. I thought it was very cool and done well. And I'll get on to Bane and my thoughts on individual performances. And as the story goes on, Bruce is kind of convinced to come back as Batman. And it happens pretty early on as well. It doesn't take too much. It takes a character called John Blake, played by Joseph Gordon-Levitt, to turn up at Wayne Manor and say, you know, there's this guy called Bane who's around and he's big trouble, and I know you're Batman. And I thought, oh, this is really cool, where he kind of just said that he was an orphan as well, this John Blake character, and he saw Bruce Wayne when he was a kid, and he could recognise the same look he had on his face because he was an orphan too, and that kind of thing. And I thought that was really cool that he just kind of clocked it instantly and knew that he was Batman, and that kind of inspires Bruce to get back out there, and he goes to the doctors and stuff, gets his brace on his leg, and he gets a brace on his leg that allows him to walk again and stuff, and throughout this, Alfred is really like, doesn't want Bruce to become Batman again. He thinks he's done enough damage to his life and stuff, and he says, you know, I don't like the fact that you even came back into to Gotham in the first place to become Batman. I just wanted something better for you and all that. And Alfred leaves pretty early on in the film as well. He says, I can't do it anymore, and he leaves, and it's like a real emotional scene. And there's so much more emotion to the Alfred and Bruce relationship in this film, which I thought was really cool actually. And people kind of complained that, you know, Alfred wasn't in it that much, but I thought it was perfect and really, really tied into the end of the film. Already I feel like I'm just telling you everything that happens in the film. Batman comes back and there's this big chase scene, and Bane is, you know, running amok in Gotham and stuff and causing trouble. So Batman needs to find him, and he kind of, every now and again, he sees Selina Kyle as Bruce Wayne and Batman, and they interact and stuff. And it's kind of like, is she, is she really a bad guy, or is there a bit of good in her and stuff? You're not quite sure. And she leads Batman to Bane, but she ends up setting a trap just to kind of save her own neck. And so he's locked down in the sewers with Bane, and Batman and Bane have this face-off. And what I really loved about this scene, this fight scene that we've all seen in the trailers and stuff, there was no music. In a film that is so driven by the music and the score, there was just no music throughout the fight scene with Batman and Bane. It was so effective. And it's one of the best fight scenes I've seen in years in a film. It was just so hard-hitting, and, you know, I guess you could almost say that it was a bit too wordy, you know, with like the dialogue and stuff. But, you know, I love that. You know, I love things that are like a little bit too over-dramatic and stuff. And there's this scene where Batman is obviously being outpowered by Bane. There's a part in the fight where he's being outpowered by Bane. So he tries using his gadgets and stuff, and Bane's just like, nah, that's not going to work on me, basically. So he turns all the lights off, and Bane's like, oh, so you're going to use the darkness and stuff. And it felt like the scene at Return of the Jedi at the end, when Darth Vader and Luke Skywalker are underneath the walkway, and Darth Vader's walking around, and he's like trying to find him and stuff. And like, even with the voice thing with Bane, I just can't help but be reminded of Return of the Jedi. Not that it was a bad thing, it's pretty cool. And then Bane just destroys Batman basically and breaks his back. And I marked out for that because I just was reading the Nightfall comic book, and they actually did a nod to that where he lifts him up like that in a gorilla press and just gives him a backbreaker, and that was kind of cool. And so then Bane takes Bruce to this prison in a foreign country where he kind of originated from, and that's where Bruce spends like the next hour of the film, like he's gone. And the main hero of the film, I think, like consistently, is John Blake, the young rookie cop, because he's always on the case. He's trying to find out what's going on and stuff, and he's he gets promoted to a detective once Commissioner Gordon gets shot. That happens early on in the film as well, before Batman gets broken. And so Commissioner Gordon's bedridden for a lot of the film until he comes back towards the end. What I loved about the film as well, that it takes place over quite a long period of time, like. You know, the opening part, you know, Bruce Wayne's a recluse, he comes back as Batman, and he gets beaten, and then he's off to this prison, and then months go by. You know, it really builds up, and it doesn't cop out in any way. And basically, to escape this prison, he has to kind of mend himself, you know, and he gets his back kind of realigned and stuff, and he's got to train. And I guess you could say, you know, it's all well and good doing some push-ups in this prison and stuff, but how did he get his leg to be better because he didn't have his brace with him? I thought that was a bit of a plot hole in the film, but with a film like this, I really, picky things like that don't really bother me. So he has to climb out of this pit, and it's almost impossible. And he tries to do it the first time, and I thought, and even my friend thought, Denzel, that he was going to do it the first time and all that, but they really, like, he failed quite a few times. So it really built up to this great moment, and he's in this prison, and he's kind of like, he has a flashback to when his father pulled him out of the well in the first film. And of course the pit, this prison, is very reminiscent of the well that he fell down. I thought that was great, a really kind of cool linking in of the first and third films, and just Bruce's story and stuff, and his fears, and that line where his dad says, why do we fall? To pick ourselves back up and stuff. It's just done so well, I thought. I really just enjoyed it so much. And then the last act of the film, Bruce comes back, and again that's another plot hole, you know, because all the bridges have been destroyed in Gotham. Bane's taken over. He's got all of Batman's like tumblers and stuff. He's got 3 Batmobiles, all the guns, all the mercenaries. Martial law's been declared. He blows up a football field, and like there's thousands of cops trapped underneath the city for months. Bane's taken over, and no one can get in or out of the city. And then Bruce just turns up. You know, he's just walking there, and I guess you could say he could have come through a tunnel or walked over the ice, because there's a cameo from Scarecrow who turns up, but he's like kind of like the judge in this new kind of Bane run Gotham, and he like sentences people to exile, which means they just walk over the frozen lake of Gotham and kind of fall through and die. So maybe Bruce could have slid across there or something, I don't know. But I love that as well, that it gets to winter and you see how long Bane's had control and everything is snowing and like the lake's frozen. I thought that was just a really cool look, just like the wide shots of the city and stuff. And there's a lot of wide shots of the city that really establishes everything. And then towards the end of the film, someone I haven't mentioned as well, there's a character early on in the film called Miranda Tate, and she's kind of like, she helped Bruce with the running of Wayne Enterprises because he's really let it drop and they're losing money. They've got hardly any money. I think it goes bankrupt actually. And she kind of helps, and it's kind of a bit of a love interest. Another thing I've read is that people think that her character was really like forced and like their romance was really fake, but I thought it just seemed like, you know, for Bruce anyway, because Alfred's like trying to set him up and stuff, and like even with this Miranda Tate, he's like, she is lovely, and then he goes and meets Lucius Fox and he's like, yeah, she's lovely. You know, it's like they're both trying to set him up, like they're his two uncles, you know, his father figures in his life, trying to get him back into life in general. So it just seems like a kind of fleeting thing for Bruce anyway. I mean, he sleeps with this woman, they, you know, they're by the fire and stuff, and yeah, it didn't seem like it was too much of a big romance or anything. I think it was done as it needed to be, and as it paid off later on, because she actually turns on him at the end, sticks a knife in him, and it turns out that she's not actually Miranda Tate, she's Talia al Ghul, who's Ra's al Ghul's daughter, and that's a big twist in the film, because we kind of learn the backstory of Bane and how he was born in this prison, and then Batman kind of figures out, or Bruce Wayne kind of figures out, that Bane is the son of Ra's al Ghul. In fact, he has a vision, a hallucination of Ra's al Ghul, confirming that. Although once I watched it the second time, I realised that Ra's al Ghul, played by Liam Neeson, doesn't confirm that Bane's his son. They did it very well. When Liam Neeson, you know, he doesn't say, oh yes, Bane was my son, so you can't go back earlier on in the film and say, hang on, wait a minute, they did it well. And I liked the character. I didn't think she was great, you know, but I don't think she ruined the film or was even a bad part of the film. I don't think she was bad. She was good, you know, decent, I'd say. Like it does seem like she goes a bit too evil towards the end. Like she's like, yeah, the Gotham's going to be blown up, and that's the big threat of the film. There's a big reactor, and there's a lot to talk about. You know, I'm sorry I'm going on so long, but the film is nearly 3 hours long. Though I will say that it didn't feel like it was nearly 3 hours long. Bruce has kind of developed this nuclear reactor under the city to create sustainable energy. Which is something the world actually really needs. So it was kind of relevant actually, but if taken out it could be turned into an atom bomb, which is Bane's plan, and that happens. So towards the end of the film, when Bruce comes out of the prison and he rises, you know, that's like a real good theme of the film. He falls and then he rises up, he comes back to Gotham, and he's got to kind of, you know, get this bomb to be put back to the reactor and defuse basically, because it's going to blow up and it's a megaton bomb kind of thing. And then there's this massive battle towards the end. Another thing I'll say, there's another character in this, played by Matthew Modine, who's he's kind of like a police general, I guess. And towards the end of the film, he kind of cops out and doesn't want to be a part of the big finale, you know, and fight against Bane and the mercenaries. And Jim Gordon's at his house. He's like, "What are you doing? Come on, you know, fight with your city." And he just, you know, he doesn't want to. But then he turns up at the end. And I think no one really like paid attention to that, but I thought that was really cool, because he was actually the first guy to walk with the cops towards the mercenaries, even though he knows he's going to die, and he does get killed. And I thought that was a cool little character, nothing big, but like a nice little like arc of a character. And yeah, the ending. In fact, I'll leave the ending till the end. I'll just talk about the performances. Christian Bale I thought was awesome as Bruce Wayne and Batman. It's actually the first time I've really enjoyed him as the character. You know, I liked him in Batman Begins. I thought he was a little bit better than The Dark Knight, but this one I really bought his performance. It's probably because he goes through so much, and you just, I don't know, I just really invested in his character a lot more as Bruce Wayne and Batman. Although, you know, I think he's cool as Batman, but like I prefer him as Bruce Wayne. I think, I don't know, there's just something about the look that I don't dislike. There's just something a little bit off about it. I don't know. Anyway. The supporting cast, Lucius Fox, played by Morgan Freeman. He was good, but he wasn't in that much. Michael Caine as Alfred almost steals the show. I think he just had some amazing scenes and did so much with the little screen time he had. Gary Oldman's Commissioner Gordon, great as always. And then the main villain, Tom Hardy, who plays Bane. I thought he was fantastic, actually. I think he's almost rivals the Joker, almost. I wouldn't say he quite does. So like the look of him was great, and like he had a real physical presence because you don't see his mouth. There's not a lot of like expression there except from the eyes, especially a scene where he's kind of like giving this speech outside the prison in the city hall. His eyes really tell a lot, and I love that we never saw the mask get taken off at the end. I thought that would have been quite cliche and stuff. Although we do see his face briefly when he's in the prison. It turns out that he wasn't Ra's al Ghul's son, and he was actually protecting Talia, who was his daughter. And we see his face briefly as he gets pulled under, and his. I thought it could have done without showing his face, maybe, you know. But there you go. I thought it was well done. His look and the voice. People have complained about the voice. Some people said they like the voice, but they don't like the effect that it put on the voice. But I really did like it because it kind of feels like there's some kind of amplifier there to really make him, you know, his voice be heard a lot more. Well, I would say clearly, but some dialogue you can't actually understand. And I almost like that as well. I almost like that I couldn't understand what he said half the time, because it just feels more realistic that way. But again, the second time I saw the film, I understood a little bit more and stuff, and could kind of just get into the mindset of listening to such a strange voice, that kind of really weird accent and stuff. At one point it sounds like Sean Connery, which is really weird. I thought he was just amazing, and just, yeah, one of my favourite villains in Batman films for sure. Really great, and just such a more physical force than the Scarecrow or the Joker, who are more like kind of psychological enemies to the Batman, whereas Bane is a lot more of a kind of physical threat, and he's a lot smarter, I think, as well. The Joker, you know, you could say that he did a lot more in The Dark Knight and caused a lot of chaos, but that was the Joker's thing, chaos. Bane, you know, he caused a lot of destruction, but you can tell there's a very smart mind there, especially with the way he kind of gives his speech and stuff. And one of my friends said, "Oh, I don't like how he's so smart, you know, if he was supposedly brought up in a prison, but I like that he was a kind of a smart guy, as well as a brooding kind of hulk of a man, really, such a force." And other people were disappointed with the way that his character was killed. Of course, he's about to kill Batman, and Catwoman turns up in the Bat-pod and just blows him away, which I thought was great. Really abrupt, but, you know, how else are you going to do it, you know? They had the kind of the moment between Bane and Batman where Batman's got him and his mask is kind of like leaking and stuff, and Batman is beating him, he's beating the crap out of him, and he's like, you know, and you can tell Batman's won, basically. So they had their moment there, and to just kill him abruptly I thought was quite realistic, actually. And people are like, oh, maybe he survived, and I'm thinking, well, that Bat-pod could blow away a tumbler, a Batmobile. I'm pretty sure it killed Bane, and I have no problems with the way that Bane was killed off in the film. Anne Hathaway as the Catwoman I thought was great. I think everyone was really skeptical about her being in the film, and me too. I wasn't too fussed with the choice of casting her, but I thought she was great, really realistic, and quite a sane take on Selena Kyle. They never mention her as Catwoman. I like that as well, and that she's just a cat burglar basically who wears the suit to, you know, not be seen when she's stealing from people and stuff. So it was very realistic, and I actually liked it. I liked her relationship with Bruce Wayne and Batman, and that really paid off as well. I'm trying to think if there's anything else I can comment on. Joseph Gordon-Levitt, of course. I don't know why I didn't think of that. He was amazing in this film. He was very subtle, and just like, I love his acting and his character, and it was played out so well, and just played out really well towards the end. So the ending of the film, they basically get the bomb. Batman, Commissioner Gordon, Catwoman, they're there. The bomb's there, and it's going off in 2 minutes. It's going to blow up the whole city of Gotham. And I love that there was a threat that really just kind of was like on an epic scale, like it's going to kill everyone kind of thing. It really was fitting for the final part of the trilogy, I think. So Batman decides he's going to hook up the bomb to his flying bat wing, well, it's just called the Bat in the film, and he's going to take it off. And of course it's mentioned early on in the film when Lucius Fox shows him the bat, which is used quite a lot throughout the film. So it's quite cool. He tells him that the autopilot is not very functional, so we know that he's not going to be able to get out in time. So he flies off, and he has this nice moment with Commissioner Gordon where he kind of says something that makes Gordon realise that it's Bruce Wayne, so that he knows before he dies. And him and Catwoman have a kiss, and a lot of people kind of groaned when I went to see that the first time. I liked it because they're similar characters, I guess, and they had a kind of humorous relationship throughout the film, and a bit of an understanding there. And I didn't mind the kiss, I thought it was a nice touch. And then he flies off with a bomb and it blows off and he's dead. And you see John Blake, Joseph Gordon-Levitt's character, he kind of throws his badge away and he's sick of the injustice and stuff and he doesn't want to be a cop anymore. So Batman's dead, Bruce Wayne's dead. You know, you got Alfred crying over his grave and stuff, saying he's failed him, just like a really, really emotional moment. And at this point I was thinking, wow, they really fucking went for it, you know. And I was always like, this is what I wanted to see. I wanted to see Batman die. Like, because I just thought, you know, what other opportunity in any other superhero film does a filmmaker have the opportunity to make a film that's going to be so big, but know that there's not going to be a sequel, even though the sequel would make so much money that it's going to end, and, you know, they're going to remake Batman so you can do anything you want. And I'm thinking, they've got to kill Batman, you know, it'd be great. And then as soon as it happened, I thought, wow, they did it. And then I felt really sad just because of the story that had built up and stuff, how much you got invested in Bruce Wayne. And I just thought, you know, that's actually quite sad. And then we see that John Blake, he picks up his stuff from the police office, and she's like, oh, I can't find you on this register, and he's like, oh, it's my birth name. She's like, oh, you should use it, Robin. And again, everyone kind of groaned like, oh god. But I think that people didn't quite get what that meant, you know, Robin John Blake. It doesn't mean that he's Dick Grayson. It doesn't mean that he's going to be Robin. I think it was just kind of a nod and like almost like a mix of the three Robins, you know, Jason Todd, I forget the other one, something Drake, and Dick Grayson. You know, Dick Grayson who was an orphan, and just kind of like a, you know, a bit of a hothead, as he's called in the film, one of the other Robins, and then the detective skills of the other Robin. It's kind of like a mishmash of all three of them. And I think the Robin thing was just a nod to the fans who wanted to see Robin but are never really going to see it in the Nolan films. And it also kind of clues you in that he's actually going to take up the mantle of Batman, and that's the big reveal at the end of the film. Because in his bag, when he leaves the police force, there's coordinates to the Batcave, and he goes into the Batcave, and then that's intercut with Alfred, who sits down in this cafe. And this was explained early on in the film, and it's like, I'm not going to go into it too much because it's just such a great moment, but it kind of ties in from something Alfred said at the beginning of the film, having a fantasy of looking over at this specific cafe and seeing Bruce there, and knowing that he had gotten out and was, you know, living a happy life outside of everything. And he's like, I wouldn't speak to you, you wouldn't speak to me, we'd just nod and we'd know. And that's when he looks over and the music kicks in and you just see Bruce sat there with Selina Kyle, and he nods back, and it's just like my favourite moment of anything, like at this moment in time. Like I'm still on like a kind of a Dark Knight Rises buzz still, you know, 2 days after. And it's such a great, just the music, the build-up, the payoff from earlier on in the film that you never really thought was going to pay off. You just thought it was like a little story, you know, but it really paid off towards the end. He nods at him, and you know that Bruce is out, and he's made it outside of Batman and Gotham. He's saved the day, and Batman's a symbol. And then you see John Blake in the Batcave, and this platform just rises up, and then it just finishes. And I like that it rises, you know, and it's just kind of like, I interpreted that he's going to become the next Batman, but I don't want to see a sequel with him as Batman. I just think it was just like a nice moment. And throughout the film, John Blake and Bruce Wayne, they kind of meet up every now and again. And as Batman, I guess, because he knows he's Batman, and Batman and Bruce Wayne, he's like, you know, you should wear a mask, you know, to protect the people that you protect if you're going to be going out and doing this kind of stuff. And Batman could be anybody, he's just a symbol. And that's what really kind of made me think that John Blake would then take on the mantle. And Robin was just really a kind of a nod, I guess, and not to be taken as he's going to be Robin and wear the fucking the yellow suit, the yellow and red suit and stuff. But again, yeah, I don't think they should do like a Batman 4 with Joseph Gordon-Levitt as Batman. As much as I love him, I don't think he physically would make a good Batman. I'd love to see it, but I think they should just leave it there because it just ended so perfectly that I don't want to see that particular Batman story continued. And I'm not really that interested in seeing another one. I don't know. I think Michael Keaton's my favourite Batman. I love those Batman films, and this Nolan trilogy has just been amazing. But Dark Knight Rises, I think, is probably my favourite. I just love everything about it. Just the way it builds it up. I could go on for another 30 minutes. It's been a really long one, but there you go. That's my thoughts on The Dark Knight Rises. I thought the ending was probably my favourite ending to a film ever. Like, the only ending to a trilogy that I can think of, or like a series, or even the ending of a film that kind of got me as emotional or feeling kind of just like, I don't know, would be Return of the Jedi, the end of Star Wars. But at the same time, that's kind of a bit lame, like they're dancing around with like little Ewok bears and stuff. Whereas this one is just so epic and so like People again have criticised the film for being too serious and taking itself too seriously, being too depressing, but I love that. I love that. I thought it was great and dark and just perfect. And yeah, the ending was just great. Probably my favourite ending to a film, I think, actually. So I think about my favourite films, you know, like Back to the Future, Aliens, you know, Empire Strikes Back. I love the ending of Empire Strikes Back, but I think, yeah, this might be my favourite ending to a film, unless I've forgotten something important. But yeah, I loved it. And I think, for me, it's the best trilogy ever made. Like, seriously. Because just in terms of consistency, like, Godfather trilogy. I thought the third one was nowhere near as good as the first two. You know, Star Wars trilogy. I thought Return of the Jedi was great, but not quite as good as Empire Strikes Back. Lord of the Rings trilogy, again, big epic and stuff, but I didn't think Return of the King was as good as the other two films. I think The Dark Knight Rises is better than The Dark Knight. I think The Dark Knight is better than Batman Begins, and I think Batman Begins is a great film. It just builds up, you know. I don't think I've ever seen that in terms of my personal opinions on films anyway. Back to the Future as well, you know. Great films, but you can't beat the first one. But this one just kept on building and was just like perfect ending, perfect beginning. Just brilliant, you know. And I guess before this, I wasn't really like the hugest Nolan fan, but I think they've really just brought it all together for me. Just fantastic. Yeah, so thanks for watching. Thanks for watching any episodes or installments. I tried to avoid calling them episodes, but thanks for watching any of these Batman videos. There's going to be one more next week. It's just going to be the Batman countdowns, and we're talking the best films, the villains, and the best Batmans and stuff. Just a nice little roundup to finish everything off. So yeah, thanks for watching. I'll see you next time, and go see this film. I'm literally about to go see it in IMAX for the third time tonight, so there you go. And again, my thoughts go out to all the families and stuff of that horrible incident in Denver, and I just think it's real sad that something, you know, that horrible could happen, you know, in somewhere as innocent as like a, you know, like a theatre and stuff. And you know, anytime something like this happens, like the Norway massacre and stuff, it just really makes you think, like, how can people do that? I can't comprehend how anyone could do something like that, honestly. But again, you know, as much as I love this film and stuff, I'm always going to think about that thing now when I think back on it, and I think that's a shame. But you know, the film really is not relevant here. It's the lives lost and just the tragedy of it. But anyway, didn't want to talk about it too much. But again, thank you for watching. See you next time. Okay, it's 3 AM. Just went to see the film in IMAX, and it was incredible. Like the size of the screen, the sound, especially during the plane scene at the beginning. The seats were shaking. Amazing. Got my little fridge magnet. Got a poster. Yeah, even more amazing the third time around. Definitely see it in IMAX. Wow. Oh, and another thing, the humour in the film is really funny. It's quite dark and depressing, but there's a lot of funny moments, that's all I'll say.